At 4:27 in the afternoon on July 28, 2026, the ground under southern Japan tore open without warning. Within minutes, part of a shopping mall came down on the people inside it. Roads split apart, a train derailed mid-track. And across the island of Kyushu, people were left waiting to find out whether the worst had already happened or whether it was still coming. Here's what we actually know, confirmed by Japanese authorities, emergency services, and multiple news agencies on the ground. No speculation needed, because the real story is already serious enough. The earthquake struck Kumamoto Prefecture on Japan's southern main island of Kyushu at around 4:27 p.m. local time. The Japan Meteorological Agency measured it at magnitude 7.1. The United States Geological Survey recorded it slightly differently, at magnitude 6.8. That gap between agencies isn't unusual and isn't a mystery. The JMA has seismograph stations planted directly across the Japanese islands, reading the shaking as it happens, right on top of the fault. While the USGS calculates the same event from sensors scattered around the planet using a different model. When two agencies differ by a few tenths of a point, that's a measurement difference, not a contradiction. What matters more than the exact decimal is what Japan's intensity scale showed on the ground, a Shindo 7, the highest level that scale goes. That's not a magnitude number, it's a direct measurement of how violently the ground actually moved where people were standing. And in parts of Kumamoto, it hit the very top of the chart. The quake was shallow, at a depth of around 10 kilometers. Shallow earthquakes tend to hit hardest, because the energy has almost no distance to travel and few rock layers to absorb the shock before reaching the surface. A magnitude 7 quake at 10 kilometers deep hits like a hammer. The same magnitude at 100 kilometers down is often barely felt at all. The worst single scene of the disaster happened at the Aeon Mall in Kashima town, which was reportedly packed with thousands of customers at the time. According to the mall operator, around 3,000 customers were evacuated to the parking lot before a gas explosion occurred in another part of the building, where some workers were still present. As rescue crews worked through the rubble, the death toll climbed. As of the most recent reporting, at least 18 people have been confirmed dead, with at least 62 injured, 6 of them seriously, and officials cautioning that the number missing and the toll itself could still rise as search teams reach areas they haven't been able to clear yet. A tsunami advisory went out almost immediately after the shaking stopped, covering the Ariake and Yatsushiro seas along Kumamoto's western coast and neighboring prefectures, with officials predicting waves up to a meter high. Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi held a press conference following the quake, stating that life-saving and rescue operations were the top priority. And Japan's defense minister confirmed the self-defense forces had accepted a disaster dispatch request from Kumamoto Prefecture to support rescue operations, information gathering, and daily living support. For close to 2 hours, the tsunami advisory stood, and coastal communities evacuated based on decades of drilled instinct. Once no dangerous wave was found building offshore, the JMA lifted it. Unlike some of Japan's most catastrophic past disasters, this one stayed a land event. The danger came from the shaking itself and what it knocked loose, not from the sea. And the shaking knocked plenty loose. Roads across the region buckled and cracked open, some directly along the path of the rupturing fault. Kumamoto Castle, a centuries-old national symbol, sustained damage, echoing what happened to the same structure back in 2016. A train derailed at a station in the region. And Kyushu's entire rail network, including the Shinkansen bullet trains, was suspended across the board for emergency safety inspections. Tens of thousands of households lost power, and mobile networks in parts of the region went down right as families were trying to reach each other to confirm everyone was safe. Japan's Nuclear Regulation Authority moved quickly to inspect the country's most sensitive infrastructure. Nearby nuclear facilities were checked in the hours after the quake, and officials reported no abnormalities, a piece of news that matters enormously, given what Japan has learned in the past about what can happen when a major earthquake compromises a nuclear facility. Here's the part authorities want people to understand most urgently right now. This is very likely not over. Officials have warned that the shallow nature of the earthquake makes ongoing seismic activity in the area likely, and have urged residents to stay especially cautious in the days ahead. Aftershocks were already registering in the hours afterward, some strong enough to be felt clearly on their own. When a fault this size ruptures, it doesn't release all its stress in one clean break. It settles unevenly, and smaller ruptures along the same fault, or nearby faults nudged by redistributed pressure, can keep firing for days or weeks. That doesn't mean a bigger quake is guaranteed to follow. Most of the time, aftershocks simply fade out gradually until the fault settles into quiet. But officials aren't taking that outcome for granted, and neither should residents. To understand why this hits so hard and why it's not a total surprise that it hit here, you have to understand what happened in this exact same region a decade ago. In April 2016, Kumamoto was struck by a sequence of major earthquakes, 2 strong foreshocks, followed less than 2 days later by a magnitude 7 main shock. That sequence killed 273 people, injured more than 2,800, and destroyed or damaged roughly 12,000 houses. The historic Aso-Hoshi Bridge collapsed entirely, and Kumamoto Castle suffered heavy structural damage that took years and enormous cost to repair. That 10-year gap isn't mystical, it comes down to basic, well-understood physics. Kyushu sits at the southern end of the Japan median tectonic line, where a system of active faults forks in 2 directions. This latest sequence ruptured the Hanago Fault and the Futagawa Fault to its north, the same broader fault network involved in 2016, with a roughly 27-kilometer section of the Futagawa Fault zone slipping as much as 3.5 meters. Seismologists studying the 2016 sequence have long noted that not every segment of that fault system fully released its stress during those earlier quakes. That leftover strain doesn't simply vanish, it sits there, quietly building, until something gives. This new earthquake may represent exactly that, the same broader fault network finishing what it started in 2016. What almost certainly kept the death toll from being far higher is something Japan has spent decades and enormous national resources building: earthquake-resistant infrastructure and relentless public preparedness. Japanese building codes are among the strictest on Earth, engineered so buildings flex and absorb shaking rather than shatter under it. Children in Japanese schools run earthquake drills routinely, the same way children elsewhere run fire drills, so that when the ground actually moves, the response is closer to instinct than panic. That preparation is a major part of why, even with a Shindo 7 earthquake and a partial mall collapse, Japan is not facing a death toll in the thousands, the way some countries have suffered from earthquakes of similar or even smaller magnitude. It's also worth being clear about where the real danger in Japanese earthquakes usually comes from. The most catastrophic disaster in the country's modern history, the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami, was so devastating primarily because of the tsunami that followed, not the shaking itself. This Kumamoto quake mercifully did not produce that kind of wave. The danger here came entirely from the ground itself and from what it broke. Reports of the shaking reached far beyond Kyushu, with people as far away as Bisan, Jeju, and Incheon in South Korea reporting they felt the tremor. Some evacuating buildings as a precaution, even though the actual damage was concentrated squarely in Kumamoto. Let's go a little deeper into why this exact stretch of Kyushu keeps getting hit, because the answer is genuinely one of the more fascinating things in geology and needs no embellishment. Japan sits at the meeting point of 4 major tectonic plates: the Pacific, Philippine Sea, Eurasian, and North American plates. An arrangement found almost nowhere else on the planet with this much overlap. Kyushu specifically sits above a subduction zone where the Philippine Sea plate is forced down and under the rest of Japan, grinding against the crust above it millimeter by millimeter, year after year. That grinding doesn't happen smoothly. Rock locks together at points along the fault, resisting the motion the plates are trying to make, and stress quietly builds at those locked points for years or decades. Eventually, the accumulated stress exceeds what the rock can hold, and it slips all at once. That sudden slip is the earthquake, not a mysterious eruption of energy, but the physical release of years of patiently accumulated mechanical strain along a line in the crust. Seismologists analyzing the rupture used what's called a moment tensor analysis, working backward from the pattern of seismic waves to figure out exactly how the fault moved. That analysis pointed to strike-slip faulting with a significant normal, or extensional, component, meaning the 2 sides of the fault mostly slid sideways past each other, with some additional vertical motion, the same basic type of movement famously associated with California's San Andreas Fault. It's also worth being honest about what officials still don't know in the first days after an event like this. The precise final death toll takes time to confirm, because search and rescue teams have to physically clear collapsed structures before anyone can say with confidence how many people were inside. Damage assessments for homes, roads, and infrastructure across an entire prefecture take even longer, often weeks, to fully tally. and predicting exactly what happens next. Whether the aftershock sequence simply tapers off on its own, or whether a larger rupture is still building somewhere along the same fault system. What agencies like the JMA can offer, and did offer here, are probability-based aftershock forecasts, urging residents to stay alert over the following several days. There's also a real, scientifically documented connection worth understanding here between large earthquakes and nearby volcanoes. Nothing mystical, just physics. Kyushu is home to some of Japan's most active volcanic systems, including Sakurajima, one of the most consistently active volcanoes on Earth, and Mount Aso, whose caldera sits not far from this earthquake's epicenter. Volcanologists have documented that a powerful earthquake can, in some cases, physically disturb the underground magma systems feeding a nearby volcano. Seismic waves can jostle magma chambers and the conduits connecting them to the surface, potentially destabilizing dissolved gases, and in some historical cases, triggering or accelerating volcanic activity in the days, weeks, or months that follow. This isn't guaranteed, and it isn't the majority outcome. Most large earthquakes near volcanoes don't trigger an eruption at all. But it's documented well enough across decades of global seismic and volcanic records that scientists will be watching Kyushu's volcanoes closely in the coming weeks. As a standard, evidence-based part of post-earthquake hazard monitoring in a volcanically active region. The earthquake early warning response also deserves a closer look, because it demonstrates infrastructure most countries simply don't have. Within moments of the shaking being detected, Japan's nationwide earthquake early warning system, which uses the faster, weaker initial seismic waves to estimate an earthquake's size and location before the slower, more destructive waves arrive, pushed alerts across the region. In a shallow near-epicenter earthquake like this one, that warning window is often only a few seconds. Simply because the source is so close, there isn't much time for the warning to outrun the shaking. Even so, those seconds matter, enough time for someone to step back from a window, for a train operator to begin an automatic braking sequence, which is part of why Shinkansen services across Kyushu were able to halt safely and be inspected before any train was allowed to move again. Japan's Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications has also issued a public warning about false and misleading information circulating online in connection with this earthquake, urging the public to rely on official sources for updates, worth keeping in mind, as this story continues to develop and unverified claims spread faster than confirmed information. If there's a single lesson underneath all of this, it's not a mysterious one. It's the same lesson seismologists have repeated for decades in Japan and everywhere else that sits on an active fault. Earthquakes cannot be predicted with precision. Not the day, not the hour, not the exact location of the next one. What can be done, and what clearly saved lives here, is preparation. Strict building codes, drilled evacuation routines, tsunami warning systems that can issue an alert and lift it within 2 hours once the danger has genuinely passed. Nuclear safety protocols checked immediately, without exception. None of that stops a fault from rupturing. All of it determines how many people walk away afterward. Kumamoto has been here before, and it came back. The scenes coming out of Kyushu right now are difficult to watch, and the people still searching for survivors and the families waiting for word on someone missing deserve every bit of attention and support this story can bring them. Keep watching the aftershock warnings over the coming days and the rescue updates from them all. If you want to keep following this with real, verified reporting as it develops, subscribe and turn on notifications. I'll keep bringing you confirmed updates as they come in. One final point is worth remembering whenever earthquakes like these dominate the headlines. Earthquake science is exceptionally good at explaining why earthquakes happen and where they are most likely over long periods of time. What it still cannot do is predict the exact day, hour, or location of the next major rupture. That's why agencies like GeoNet focus on monitoring, measuring, and communicating the latest data rather than making specific predictions that the science simply cannot support. For people living in New Zealand, the most useful response isn't fear, it's preparedness. Knowing your local evacuation routes, securing heavy furniture, keeping emergency supplies ready, and understanding whether you're in a tsunami hazard zone are practical steps that make a real difference regardless of when the next significant earthquake occurs. Those measures are valuable because they prepare people for the reality of living on an active plate boundary, not because of any single earthquake that happened this week. In the end, this week's activity adds another important chapter to New Zealand's remarkable geological story, but it doesn't rewrite it. The country will continue experiencing earthquakes because that's exactly how an active plate boundary behaves. Scientists will keep refining their models, collecting more data and improving hazard assessments. And while the Earth's crust will never stop moving beneath New Zealand, the combination of world-class monitoring, strong engineering standards, and an informed public remains one of the country's greatest strengths in facing whatever nature brings next. If you want to keep following this story with real, verified seismic data instead of exaggerated claims, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because this region is worth watching closely, and I'll keep bringing you the actual numbers as they come in.